Howdy folks, welcome to module 20 of the CompTIA A+ course. As you can see, today's module is titled Supporting Mobile Software. Now today's module is going to be predominantly about mobile devices, specifically the security side of things and the troubleshooting side of things. Now as for the agenda, it consists of three main sections this module. The first section is mobile operating system security, no surprise there because of what I just said. The second section is troubleshooting mobile operating system and software, and the third and the last section we'll cover in this module is troubleshoot operating system and app security. Now before we get to the gist of things, guys, in case you guys haven't done it, remember to give this video a like I said in the other videos. I do put a lot of time and effort into making these videos, so it will go a long way if you can give it a like. If you'd like to know when the last two modules for this course goes live, maybe consider giving it a subscribe. And for those of you that don't know yet, maybe you're new on the channel, there is 3 practice questions at the end of this playlist. So go check out at the end of this playlist. For both Core 1 and Core 2, you can find 3 practice questions which are theory-based. But if you're looking for something more practical, that you can find on my Patreon. So go check that out. The link is in the video description down below. Alright, let's get to it. Mobile operating system security. Now within this section, folks, I think a good place to start would be screen locks. Something you guys are probably familiar with. You probably would have seen this because pretty much everybody's phone these days has a screen lock. This is normally some sort of pattern you've got to draw. It's possibly a pin. Maybe there's a fingerprint, that you're going to have to go and provide. It could possibly be on the side of the phone, the back of the phone, or even on the phone screen in some cases. So it's a biometric of sorts. All of these classify as a screen lock. And why do we have them? Well, generally to keep people off. It's not just to keep people off. It's to keep certain things confidential, secure, and safe. So why screen locks matter? Well, guys, that is to prevent unauthorized access to confidential data, passwords, and messages, and of course much more. What it also does is it protects against loss. So if someone happens to get a hold of your phone, they could potentially see stuff they're not supposed to, things like that. So it helps protect against loss, it helps protect against theft, and believe it or not, it helps protect against social engineering attacks. In terms of social engineering, remember that's, pretending to be someone you're not or impersonation. The last thing we want here is somebody using your phone pretending to be you to gain access to something or to basically trick, some of your friends, family, or co-workers into thinking, well, they are you. That's not something we want. That can obviously end up very badly. Now, in terms of the screen lock methods, that would be the ones I've briefly mentioned just a couple of moments ago, guys. This includes, but is not limited to, possibly using a PIN or a password. A password is not something I see very often on people's phones, but it is something you can go and add, mind you. It's normally going to be a pattern that you're going to have to go and draw, or it's going to be a fingerprint you're going to have to go and provide. That's the most common ones. I think the least common one out of the lot here is probably going to be a PIN or a password. I don't see those very often, but you do get them. The more common one is probably going to be biometrics and, well, pattern lock. That's the most common ones I've normally come across. Now, besides all of this talk about screen locks, guys, there is actually additional security that you can go and make use of to, well, kind of sort of keep people off your device. That would be things like failed login restrictions. So if somebody gets your password wrong or your pattern wrong or whatever wrong a certain amount of times, the device either locks itself entirely or it times out for a certain period of time. And generally on most devices, if it eventually, gets past this timeout period, if somebody tries to get in again and they get it wrong again, the timeout period will get longer and longer subsequently. So failed login restrictions, we can say increasing lockout times, they deter access attempts. Now when it comes to mobile security, guys, we can also talk about mobile security software. Believe it or not, you can actually get security software on that mobile device of yours. So that phone of yours, that tablet of yours, yes, You can absolutely have security software on there, and a lot of them actually does have it by default. You might just not know it. So besides your laptop or desktop that'll have various kinds of security software like a firewall, an antivirus, and much more, your phone, your tablet can definitely have the same. They just look a bit different, they're called different, and they behave differently. You can also go and download and install third-party security softwares, guys. Yes. So if you go into your respective phone stores, if you're using Android, that'll be the Play Store. If you're using Apple, you'll probably be using the iOS operating systems. On that, it'll probably be the Apple Store or something along those lines. If you go to those respective stores, you'll find there is antivirus software you can go and download and install. I'm personally not a big fan of those. I mean, at the end of the day, security is good. You should definitely have security. But something I've noticed is if the security software does not natively come out on that phone and you go and add it afterwards, it's got a couple of drawbacks. It's going to normally consume a lot of battery life, and it's going to make the phone slower because the phone was not designed to have that antivirus or whatever security software you're going to go and install afterwards. It was not designed to have that. If it came out of that software from the factory, then whatever battery life you normally experience, well, that's going to be the same. It's not going to change because it came out like that from the factory. But if you go and install some sort of security software afterwards, like some sort of antivirus, you'll notice the battery life is going to drastically decrease and the phone's performance is drastically going to decrease as well. And you might even see sometimes the data usage might also, increase a lot as well. Not something we want. Anyway, guys, getting back to the topic at hand here. So a couple of key measures that you or the user can go and implement is perhaps to go look at something like updates. Make sure you do updates. I mean, I don't think I need to explain what updates are, but it's very important. So how one can go about doing that, so obviously it's not going to be the same place or the same way for different phones. If you go look at iOS, being Apple's operating system, you're simply going to go into the settings. If you look at Android, which is Google's operating system, for that one, you're going to go into system updates. Now, I do want to make it clear that these are the two only phone operating systems that it's mentioned in A+ at this time, and it's the only two that they will ask you about in the exam at this time. However, you do get many other operating systems out there, and it's not the same for all of them. They all have their own benefits, they have their own drawbacks, and they have their own ways of doing things. For example, another very, very big phone provider you will get is Huawei. Now, Huawei has its own operating system, and I believe it's called Harmony. Correct me in the comment section down below if I'm wrong. I keep forgetting what the name is. So I'm striking a bit of a blank right now. I think it's called Harmony. It's been a while since I've used Huawei phones. So they used to use Android, and then obviously now the Chinese and the Americans have gotten into a bit of a pickle. They're not getting along exactly. So with that, Huawei has now developed their own operating system, which is Harmony, and it's taking the market by storm. Unfortunately, it's not covered in the A+ course. So it might be because A+ is an American course, and well, Huawei is the Chinese brand. So that might be one of the reasons why it's not included in the course just yet. So we'll see. Maybe they'll change their mind. For now, only iOS and Android's covered in the course, and that's the only ones you'll be asked about in the exam. Now, other key measures, guys, that you guys can go and take in terms of security, for your phone, software-wise. This is something I have mentioned. Antivirus. Some phones come out of them by default, but with a lot of phones, you will have to download and install this separately. It's got benefits, obviously, because your phone is going to be secure. It's going to help take care of threats and all of that. A couple of obvious drawbacks would be the ones I've mentioned. It's going to kill your phone's battery life. It's going to kill your phone's performance. And you might even potentially see your data usage spike through the roof. So, yeah, use with caution. So there's going to be upsides to it. There's going to be downsides to it. Now, what does these antiviruses do in terms of phones? Well, obviously, they block threats. Obvious, right? What they also do is they monitor apps. Now, this is something that most phones, fortunately for us, do have built in by default. If you go look at something like Android, this will probably be Google Play Protect. That's one of the things they call it. But you do get this on other phones as well. Once again, Huawei has this built into it by default. I sound like I'm promoting them, but I'm not. I'm just stating facts. My job here is to state facts, to teach you guys the stuff, and to get you guys to pass the exam. I'm not here to promote or demote any brands, because honestly, I couldn't care less. And with that being said, today's video does not have a sponsor. Well, besides you guys, obviously. So, for those of you that are sponsoring my channel and the videos, the background, I've got you guys, but there's not an actual official sponsor for today's video. So, I can honestly tell you, I'm not promoting or demoting any brands in this video. Definitely not. So a lot of phones, they do have security software running in the background that monitors your apps. So how you guys might perceive this is whenever you are opening an app, especially for the first time, it may or may not ask you, do you want to allow this app to access perhaps your gallery? Do you want to allow this app to access, let's say, your camera? Do you want to allow this app to access your mic, your contacts? So depending on what the app does, it will ask you, do you want to allow the app to do this, or do you want to allow it to do that? Do you want to allow it to access your GPS? It's going to ask you, do you want to allow it to access this or that? It all depends on what the app is supposed to actually do. Now, it can't just go and use these components without your consent. Well, that depends on the phone, of course. And then, guys, you get firewalls, also built into a lot of phones nowadays. Once again, Huawei being the biggest ones. I think, honestly, Huawei's on the lead with this one. Yes, you do get it on the phones, but as someone that's worked on many phones, one of the phone brands, in my honest opinion, that I've seen, and I think they're a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack in terms of this, is once again Huawei. I don't know. I'm not promoting them. It's just something I've seen. So it allows you to block activity using a VPN, perhaps. No root needed. And these firewalls that are built into the phones can do a lot of things, guys. You can honestly prevent users from doing certain things or accessing certain websites. But for the most part, it's normally for you as the user of the device to block certain apps from accessing the internet. So you can go and say, I don't want to allow this app to access the internet, or I do want to allow it to access the internet. Or only allow the app to access the internet if it's over Wi-Fi. Or only allow the app to access the internet when the app is in use. Not when the app is just idling in the background. So you get to choose when it gets access to the internet, if at all, and also under what circumstances. Anyway, guys, I'm going to move you guys along to the next topic. That would be enterprise mobility management. Now, with enterprise mobility management, guys, you get different kinds of models. We call these models. One of the most famous and most well-known models when it comes to the company environments is BYOD. It stands for Bring Your Own Device. That would be when the employees come to the office and they use their own phone or their own tablet for the purposes of work. So it belongs to them, it belongs to the employee. They can do what they want with that device in most cases, but they're using it for the purpose of work. Now, from a company perspective, there's benefits to that. There's drawbacks to that. So each of these models has its own benefits and its own drawbacks. So from a company perspective, if employees bring their own devices, obviously this saves the company a tremendous amount of money because it's less assets they're going to have to go and buy. As for the drawbacks, there's unfortunately a lot of drawbacks to this method, from a company perspective. Since these devices belong to the user, we as companies don't have a lot of control over them. Often you'll find we'll have zero control. So we'll often have zero or very limited control over these devices because they ultimately belong to the user. I can't always go and force the user to go and do this or go and do that when the device belongs to them. It is their property after all. Now with BYOD we can say it's employee owned, but it's company approved devices. So if an employee wants to use their own device for the purpose of work, it's an employee owned device obviously, but it needs to be approved by the company before that person can actually use it for the purposes of work. Now, a couple of other models you get, I'm going to mention 4 for you guys here in total. The other ones are less common. It's terms we don't use that often, but they actually are very common. We just don't use the terms that often. So another one we get is COBO. If you don't know what that is, guys, it is a company-owned device and business-only use. So it's a very common scenario. It's a very common model we get. We just don't call it that. So you'll hear people talking about BYOD all the time. It's very common. But very rarely do we hear people say COBO. I don't really hear people saying that. And yet it is something we get all the time. Companies give people devices all the time. So if you work for a company, it's very, very common for a company to give you a company-owned laptop. And you will use that laptop for the purpose of work. And in most cases, only for the purpose of work. So most companies these days, if you're working in IT, they'll probably give you a laptop. And in most cases, that laptop is only allowed to be used for work. So I actually want to go as far as to say that out of these 4 models I'm going to mention, COBO is probably the most common one you're going to get. It actually is. But you do get other ones as well. For instance, you get COPE. That one is a company-owned device as well, just like the previous one. Except in this scenario, they do have some limited personal use. You are, as a user, allowed to actually go and use this for personal use. Limited personal use, but at least you can go and use it for some sort of personal use. They'll probably specify what you can use it for and what not. And then the last model today, guys, is CYOD. This one, the employees choose from approved devices. So they actually have to choose from approved devices from the company. So now we know about the different kinds of models we get. So sometimes the device belongs to the employee, sometimes it belongs to the company. If it belongs to the company, sometimes you can only use it for work, sometimes you can use it for personal use. Now, besides all of that, when it comes to management, how do we as a company or as an IT team manage these users and their devices? How do we give them what they need? How do we deploy to them what they need? How do we enforce policies? How do we monitor what they're doing and what they have and all of that kinds of stuff? Well, there's many tools you can go and use for that, guys. But one of the tools that we mentioned in this specific course is something called Microsoft Intune. It's obviously a Microsoft tool because the name is literally there. It literally says Microsoft Intune. But this tool, guys, was originally designed to help you as an administrator manage phones and tablets. Yes, you can use it for laptops and desktops, but it was actually designed with phones and tablets in mind. This is a cloud-based tool, guys, in case you guys don't know. So the users can actually be anywhere in the world with that device of theirs. As long as they've got a screen and as long as they've got an internet connection, I can manage that device of theirs. Now, the fact that I'm saying, hey, I can manage any device anywhere, anytime, it kind of sort of makes it sound like hacking. So there's a catch. For me to be able to manage that device in question has to be enrolled into the company's Intune environment. Think of this as giving me permission to manage that device of yours. Now, this is a topic we are going to go deeper on later in the course, so stay tuned for that. I don't want to go too deep into it now, otherwise I'm going to spoil it for later, but it's a very cool topic. Intune, guys, is an example of an MDM. MDM being an abbreviation for Mobile Device Management. You get many other MDMs out there, but Intune is probably the most well-known one and the most commonly used one out there. It is what most companies out there actually use. Very rarely will you actually find a company using a different MDM. I honestly have never seen a company using a different MDM, but they are out there. I know that for a fact. So Microsoft Intune, guys, in short, it manages apps and enforces policies. At least that's what CompTIA says. But in reality, it can do way more than that. Stay tuned for that later in the course. Now, in terms of security, if we're coming at this from an enterprise mobility management perspective, security-wise, we've got tailored profiles, guys, and we've got tech solutions and training. These tailored profiles, they specify what people can do and what they cannot do, what they can access and not access, what they can see and not access. In terms of tech solutions and training, that is also something that has proved very useful in company environments. Alright, and then guys, the next topic here up, you're not going to believe me, is Mobile Device Management, MDM. So what is that? Doesn't that sound familiar? Yes, it should, guys, because that is Intune, something we literally just spoke about a couple of moments ago. I told you guys it's going to come up. So MDM is not something specific, as I've said before. You get many MDMs out there, but one of the main ones, one of the most commonly used ones, and one of the most widely used ones is, of course, Microsoft's Intune. Now, this MDM, guys, allows you as an administrator to manage people's devices, whether they belong to the company or whether they belong to the user. It's just most commonly used on company-owned devices because obviously people are not going to go and enroll their own personal devices into the company's Intune environment. Think about that for a moment. If you have your own device that belongs to you, that you're using for the purpose of work, do you really want your company to have control over that device? Probably not. Now, some companies, they might force you. You might say, how? Well, they might say, you know what? It's fine if you want to use your own personal device for the purpose of work, but please note, one of our requirements is going to be that that device of yours is enrolled into Intune. So they might make it a requirement. They might make it a conditional access policy even. That's the kind of policy you actually get in IT. So for you to have access to resources, that device of yours needs to be enrolled into Intune. It's an actual conditional access policy you can go and specify. So they can actually kind of sort of force your hand in that matter if you think about it. Now you might probably be wondering to yourself, why do they want to force my device that belongs to me? Why do they want to force me to have that device enrolled into their Intune? Well, it's not really because they want to have control per se. It's in most cases just to make sure you are safe and secure, because you get a lot of users out there that are going to be using their own device, but that device of theirs is not safe and secure. So your company probably just wants to make sure you're using the latest version of Windows, you've got the latest updates installed, that you've got a password that's long and safe and secure, that it meets the complexity requirements. Maybe they want to make sure that you've got some sort of BitLocker encryption going for you. Things like that. It's just to make sure you're safe and secure, because a lot of people, they don't understand security like you guys do. You guys are obviously in IT now, or you're going to be in IT, so you guys are going to understand this. But the average Joe and the average office, they're not tech savvy, guys. They don't understand the security risks like you do. Now, in terms of overview of MDM, I probably gave you guys an overview already here, but anyway. So MDMs, guys, they enforce security policies on enterprise and bring your own devices. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. Sounds silly. Now, MDMs, guys, they also control network access and device usage. So who can access the network? And if so, under what circumstances? So if a device has been jailbroken, if you know what that is, it might block you. That is a topic that's coming up later in this very same module. So if your device has been rooted or jailbroken, it might not allow you. But if it's not been jailbroken or rooted, it will allow you to access the network. That's just one condition of many I can think of. A couple of key functions for MDMs, and keep in mind, the list I'm going to give you is not the full list. I'm going to list about 6 for you guys. But in terms of key functions, it can actually in reality be a lot more. So MDMs, guys, one of the many things you can go and do is it allows you as the admin to go and configure Wi-Fi and VPN. So if your user is working someplace remotely and you need to go and configure Wi-Fi or VPN on their device, it allows you to do that on their device remotely. Pretty cool, right? It allows you to enforce passwords and encryption. So if that user is working with sensitive data, or your company's got strict security requirements, you can force passwords on users. You can force them to have a password. If they've got none, you can force them to make their password a certain length. You can force them to make their password meet certain security requirements, complexity requirements, like it has to be uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols, things like that. You can force them to have encryption, of course, as well, like BitLocker encryption, if you guys are familiar with BitLocker. Other key functions that comes to mind, guys, is managing apps and permissions. You can manage what apps they've got on their device. So if they need to have a certain app on their device and they don't have it, you can deploy it to them via Intune. Or if you see they have apps on that device that they're not supposed to have, you can use Intune to remove it. All of this can be done automatically. It's not a matter of you have to now manually go and do this as an admin. No! You go and set compliancy policies. These compliancy policies will scan people's devices. If it finds an app is missing, it'll add it. If it finds an app has been added that does not belong, it'll go and remove it. If it finds an app is installed but it's the wrong version, it'll correct it to be the correct version. Pretty cool, right? So that's 3 functions. A 4th one I'm going to add to the mix here for you guys is regulating network access. So with an MDM like Intune, you can go ahead and regulate network access. Heck, guys, you can go and monitor compliance. So if somebody needs to have, let's say, Windows 11 installed, you can see if they actually have Windows 11 installed. You can literally see everything about that person's device. You can see, oh, this person is using a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a phone. You can see what the physical specs of that device is. You can see how much system memory they've got, in other words, RAM. You can see how much processing power they've got, in other words, CPU. You can see how much storage they've got, in other words, hard drive. You can see what operating system they've got installed, whether it's Windows or otherwise. You can see what edition it is, what build it is. You can see if they've got updates installed, what updates they've got installed. You can see what drivers they've got installed, what programs they've got installed. So since we can pretty much see everything, it allows us to see if people are compliant. And it allows us to also enforce what we call compliancy policies. The last key function I'm going to mention for today, and once again, this is not all of them, is it allows you guys to enable remote updates. I mean, how funky is that? So you can actually force someone's device to go and update remotely. Really useful, let me tell you that. Anyway, guys, let's move along to the next topic here. Two-factor authentication. Now, before I go and dive into that, too deep, let's first talk about authentication. Authentication, guys, in case you don't remember, or if you don't know, it's to prove you are who you claim to be. That you are the owner to this account, or that you are the owner to this device. Now, to prove your identity, folks, this can be done in many ways. You can do it by providing something that you know, like a password, a PIN, or a phrase, something that only you would know. It could be to provide something that you have physically on your person, in your possession. This could be a bank card, a smart card, a thumb, a fob. You get the idea. It can even be your phone, guys, because the phone receives a one-time PIN, in other words, an OTP, but it's still on a device that you possess, being the phone. But nowadays, it's more likely to be some sort of app acknowledgement. So there might be an app installed on your phone, and you've got to acknowledge something on this app. This could be the Google Authenticator app. This could be the Microsoft Authenticator app. Or it can even be your respective banking app. A lot of banking apps also require you to go and authenticate something. But it still represents something you have, which is the phone. A third category you get, these categories are called factors, by the way. A third category of factor is something that you are, which is normally biometric in nature. This could be a fingerprint scan, retina eye scan, facial recognition, voice recognition. You get the idea. So those three factors or categories I've just mentioned is the three most common factors and the most widely used factors. But I do want to make it clear that you get many other categories and factors. Just to give you an idea, this is not really part of the course right now, it can also be someplace you are, which is called a geographic lock. It can also be a time constraint. So this person or this something can only log into this, whatever this is, certain times a day, perhaps only between 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If it's outside of that time scope, you're not going to get in. So there's 5 for you guys. A sixth one I'm going to add, and this will be the last one for now, is something that you are doing. Something I haven't actually seen in real life, mind you. I know it exists. It's something you'll probably only see in movies. But apparently it's out there. So this could be something like a passageway, and it's going to monitor how you walk down that passage, as an example. I saw this once, I think, in a Mission Impossible movie that's got Tom Cruise in it. I don't know which one it was, but it was definitely not the latest one. And he had to walk down this passage a certain way, match the posture and the height and the weight of a certain person. So that looks like sci-fi, but apparently it exists. I didn't know that. So where you find that, I don't know. I've had hundreds, if not thousands of clients, and I've never ever seen that at any one of my clients. So I don't know where the heck you find that. Maybe you'll find it at the Reserve Bank or something like that. But if you guys know where you find that, please let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to know where you would ever find that kind of authentication. So I know the screen is still technically blank here, guys, but I wanted to make sure you guys understand what authentication is. Now, when we say two-factor authentication, it means you or the user, you've got to provide 2 forms of proof that you are who you claim to be, not just one. And these 2 forms of proof have to fall into 2 different categories. If they fall into the same category, the same factor, it doesn't count. For example, if I ask you for a PIN and a password, you might think that's 2-factor, but it's not. A PIN is something you know, and a password is also something you know. It's the same category. In other words, the same factor. That's still technically single factor, not 2-factor, not multi-factor. So 2-factor is when you ask in 2 different categories. So this will be something you know and perhaps something you have, or something you know and something that you are. An example would be if you go to an ATM to go and withdraw money. Most ATMs will normally ask you for a card and a PIN. So you provide a card, which is something you possess, something you have, and then you provide a PIN, which is something you know. That is an example of 2-factor, but also happens to be an example of multi-factor. 2-factor is definitely multi-factor because it's multiple factors, but when I say multi-factor, it's not necessarily 2-factor. It could be, but it can also be 3 factors, 4 factors, 5 factors. The word multi doesn't specify how many factors. It just means it's 2 or more. But when I say two-factor, it's obviously two factors because it literally says in the name it's two factors. If I say three-factor authentication, then obviously it's three factors because it says so in the name. But if I just say multi-factor, we just know it's two or more. We don't know how many. Just something I wanted to point out to you guys. Anyway, so now we have more or less an idea what authentication is and what two-factor authentication is, and coincidentally now also what three-factor and multi-factor authentication is. So on that note, guys, when it comes to access control, two-factor authentication is very good at implementing that. It's to make sure people don't have access to stuff they're not supposed to. Only the right people have access to the right stuff. So if you're working on stuff that's very confidential, that needs to be secure, implementing two-factor authentication is a good way to go. So you might want to go and look at things like screen locks, and in terms of screen locks, you might want to go look at things like passwords, pins, biometrics, and when we talk about biometrics, once again, that could be fingerprint, facial recognition, that kinds of stuff. And then guys, one last point I want to mention under this specific topic, enterprise authentication. You'll find a lot of companies, because companies are technically seen as enterprises, or at least in most cases. Technically, the term enterprise is something we use for a very, very large company, but you'll find a lot of people use that same term for small companies, which is not actually correct. So enterprise authentication generally makes use of two-factor authentication. So this is used to re-authenticate, so it's used for re-authentication, and it's required for corporate access. So on that note, guys, in a lot of companies you'll find you need to go and prove you are who you claim to be, but then when you go to something else, you have to do it again and again and again. It actually gets very, very annoying. And in a lot of cases, people say this is actually making people less productive because people are spending so much freaking time logging in the whole time and proving they are who they claim to be that they actually have a lot less time to actually get any work done. So you need to be careful when you go and implement too much authentication or when you ask people to prove it too many times. Yes, you are more secure, but there's going to be a drawback to that. People are also going to be less productive. And they're also going to be a lot more annoyed by it. So in terms of enterprise authentication, we look at things like 2FA. That's the short way to say two-factor authentication. It means, and this part you guys know now, it means you combine two credentials. Two different factors. Have to be two different categories. So this could, for example, be a fingerprint and an OTP. A fingerprint is something that you are, and an OTP is something that you possess because you're going to receive it either on your phone or something along those lines. It's generally something you possess. It can also be email, it can be a text, as long as it's two factors or more. Two different categories or more. Should not be the same category, as I've very much explained now. Alright guys, I'm going to move you on to the last topic for this particular section, and then we'll move on to the next section in this module. Locator apps and remote wipe. Now I think the name alone should kind of sort of already tell you guys what you need to know. So locator apps is used to, well, locate stuff. Locate your phone, locate where you are, where someone else is, where something is. And the remote wipe is to, well, remote wipe. Remote wipe a device. So this could be if your device is misplaced, stolen, or if somebody's left your company and your company feels this person has too much sensitive information on that device, then they can go and do what we call remote wipe on that device and wipe any sensitive data from the device. Pretty cool and scary at the same time. So with that in mind, when we talk about features, guys, we talk about things like GPS with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth for tracking. So you can use either the GPS or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to track a device. Now, up until not too long ago, the only thing you can go and use was a GPS. So if your phone was now misplaced, lost or stolen, you'd have to make sure the GPS was turned on, because if it was not, you would not be able to track that device of yours. Now, most of us don't have our GPS on. Unless you were using your maps recently, your locator apps or something like that, you're probably not going to have your GPS on because it tends to use a lot of battery life. And due to that, we tend to leave the GPS off if it's not in use. The same with Bluetooth. Honestly, guys, if I'm not using my Bluetooth, I turn it off because it consumes a lot of battery. And the same goes for my GPS. Anything I don't use on my phone, I turn off because it extends my battery life. Now, if your GPS is off, which is normally what people do if they don't use it, how do you track your phone if it's misplaced, stolen, lost, anything like that? Well, you don't. Until recently. Now, you can also trace it via Wi-Fi. If it happens to be on a Wi-Fi connection somewhere, you can trace it via that. Or you can just go and use Bluetooth to go and track it. Now, it's not necessarily a case if you have to have Bluetooth turned on nowadays, especially in terms of Android device. I think literally within this year, being 2025, so by the time you guys watch this, it may or may not be 2025 anymore, but literally within this year, being 2025, Android has got a new function now where you can actually go and track your phone via Bluetooth. So if your phone is now, let's say, stolen, and it's in the proximity or vicinity of other phones, it can actually via Bluetooth tell those phones, hey, psst, here I am. This is where I am. Please tell my owner where I am. So it's kind of like a phone being kidnapped. It's going to tell those other phones where it is, and those other phones will tell you where your phone is. So the only time this does not work, obviously, is if your phone is in some place very remote where it's not near any phone, which is very unlikely because pretty much anywhere and everywhere these days, you're going to find a phone. And they all have Bluetooth these days, of course. Other features, guys, is to lock, message, call, or disable features remotely. Pretty cool, right? So you can go and lock a phone remotely, you can message remotely, you can call it remotely, or you can go and disable features remotely. Really cool to go and do that, but also scary once again. Then, of course, you can go and do remote wipe. I think the name explains itself. Like I said earlier, this clears all data on the device. So that is something we do if we're really sure this device has been stolen. Then you probably don't want them to get a hold of any data on that device. So you might go and execute what we call a remote wipe to go and wipe everything on that device. You really don't want to go and do that if you're not absolutely sure this device has been stolen, because it's going to be very unfortunate if you find this device accidentally after this and you're like, oh shucks, it was not actually stolen, it was just misplaced. And now you went and wiped everything. And if I'm being really honest with you guys, remote wipe doesn't generally work if the device is stolen. If a device is misplaced and it happens to still be on, yes. If the device belonged to an employee and they left your company, yes. Because those devices are still on in most cases and they're still on some sort of network in most cases. But if a device is stolen, and this is something they don't normally tell in the courses, I'm adding this as an extra for you guys in the course. It's not something they'll ask you in the exam. If a device is stolen, and in real life, it does not work to go and remote wipe it. Because one of the first things they do is they turn the device off, and if it's got a SIM card in, it'll take the SIM card out, and they'll disconnect this device from any Wi-Fi. So if it's not on any mobile network, Wi-Fi network, any other form of network, how do you think that device is going to receive the instruction from you to go and wipe itself? It's not going to receive it, guys. If it doesn't receive it, it's not going to wipe itself. So it doesn't really work with stolen devices. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, so besides a remote wipe, you also get an MDM wipe. So in other words, a mobile device management wipe. Or, as some other people might call it, an Intune wipe, since MDM is usually seen as Intune. So an Intune wipe, it removes corporate data only. At least that's what CompTIA says, which is not entirely true. I can honestly tell you with Intune, you can choose. You can choose, do you want to remove only what is deemed as corporate data? Or do you want to remove all the data on that device? So Intune does actually give the ability to also go and do a full wipe if deemed necessary. And I've seen a lot of companies actually opt for that option. Anyway, guys, so that concludes the first main section of this module. Let me move you guys into the second main section, which is actually a very short one. It is called Troubleshoot Mobile Operating System and Software. Alright folks, one of the first things we're going to be talking about in this new section is mobile device troubleshooting tools. So what tools can one actually go and use on your phone to go and do, well, troubleshooting? One of the first things that comes to mind is something that we call settings access. So how does one go about accessing the settings on your phone? Now, well, that depends on the brand of phone you've got, and what operating system you've got. So if you're running Android, that would normally involve you swiping down from the notifications. So if you've got an Android phone, you would know what I'm talking about. At the top of your notifications, way at the top of the phone, you're going to swipe down and you're going to swipe up for apps. If you're one of the guys that's running iOS on your phone, then that would also be swiping down. And then the top right, there, you would go for the control panel. So it's not exactly the same for all phones. If you go look at some of the other brands, which is not actually covered in this course, like Huawei once again, it's a different story. Alternatively, you can just go into your menus and just look for settings. There you can also find settings, and there you'll find various troubleshooting tools. It's worth noting though that not all troubleshooting tools will be shown or will be listed in settings until you go and jailbreak that device or root that device. Something worth mentioning. Right, and then you can also go and try a good old-fashioned reboot, guys. A good old-fashioned reboot on your phone. You will be surprised to know how many things it actually does. It's not just on computers, but also on phones and actually a lot of devices. If you do a reboot, it does stuff like clearing RAM, it fixes issues, I mean, just to name a few. And then, folks, if you do a reboot, you can also go into what is known as safe mode. Very much the same concept as safe mode on a computer. So this is something that's more, for Android. And if you are using an Android, this would effectively disable third-party apps. So if you want to, or if you need to, for some reason, start this device of yours up without your third-party apps, this would be the way to do it. Maybe you suspect one of these third-party apps is the culprit on your phone. Maybe something on the phone is misbehaving or is not working, and you suspect it's a third-party app. Now, without having to necessarily remove the app, you can start this device in what is known as safe mode. That app will not start up in the background. And then, guys, you can go and do what we call a factory reset. A factory reset is a little drastic, so that's more of a if all else fails kind of thing. So if all else fails, and you really need to fix this device somehow, factory reset's normally the way to go. Unfortunately, it is going to erase all data on that device, so if at all still possible, you might want to go and back up your contact numbers, you might want to go and back up your photos and your videos. Anything that has not been backed up to the cloud, you might want to go and do a manual backup, because factory reset, guys, is going to erase everything on that device. So yeah, just take note that you are going to have to back up first before you go and use that, assuming you can even do that. Other things you guys might want to go and try, not something I do often, is to go and use battery saver modes. Not really ideal for troubleshooting scenarios, but it is something I should mention to you guys. And then also, avoid extreme temperatures, especially in terms of heat. So, yeah, if you look at something like a phone or a tablet, guys, they don't like extreme cold, and they definitely don't like extreme heat. There's been a couple of times I would use my phone as a GPS, I'll be driving around in traffic, and it'll be an extremely hot day, and sometimes this phone of mine would even have a phone cover to obviously, well, protect it if it falls on the floor, so the phone doesn't break. But the phone cover, unfortunately, causes the phone to get even hotter, or warmer than what it should be. And if you're going to be using this device of yours, as a GPS on a very hot day, with a phone cover, in a car that's very hot and stuffy, the phone is going to get very hot, and you'll find that some of these devices just randomly shut down on you. It's either going to get slow and non-responsive, or just randomly shut down. Sometimes I'll even say getting too hot. I've seen sometimes my phone will actually even display a message that says the device is getting too hot, and it'll shut down, it will cease to function, to kind of prevent any permanent damage. So yeah, who knew, right? Anyway, guys, so when it comes to troubleshooting app issues, so not necessarily the device itself, but more specifically app issues, one short way would probably be to go and try and uninstall this culprit of an app, or to try and reinstall this culprit of an app. So that's one short way to normally go and try and do it. So on the iOS operating system, once again, if you want to get this done, you're going to do a long press, and you're going to go and tap X. So for those of you using iOS, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. And for those of you that are Android users, probably not everybody is going to be Android and iOS users, but for those of you that are Android users, which is a lot of people, you're going to go to your settings on that Android, you're going to go to apps, or you can drag to uninstall it. So if you just hold your finger down on this app icon in question, you'll find often a little option will pop up that says uninstall, and you just drag it to the uninstall section. It's very straightforward, it's very easy, it's very user-friendly, guys. And then in terms of MDM restrictions. So first of all, what's an MDM again, guys? It stands for Mobile Device Management. An example would be the Microsoft Intune I spoke of earlier. It allows you, as the admin, to control these people's devices. You can go and add stuff, remove stuff, configure stuff, and just in general, take note of stuff. So you can go and check what specs this device is, what stuff is installed. You get the idea. So there's many things you can do with an MDM. So MDMs, they might possibly limit functionality. So that could potentially be why an app is not working on someone's phone. It could be that maybe there's an MDM policy or something along the lines, and that MDM policy is causing this app not to want to install, or is causing it not to work at all, or is causing it not to work correctly. So yes, MDM policies can absolutely do that, guys. Now folks, MDM restrictions can also go and do iOS wired updates. So a lot of people don't know that, but it can. So if you need to go and do an update on an operating system of a phone, yes, MDMs can absolutely achieve that. Assuming this device has got internet, of course. Or in this case, a wired update as they call it. Now, in terms of MDM restrictions, one last one I'm going to add for you guys is you can also go and, well, prevent people from using Finder or iTunes. So a lot of companies have got weird policies in place for whatever reasons they might have. And if you don't want people using Finder, for those of you who know what Finder is, or if you don't want them using iTunes, you can go and block that. Now, that's the examples they're giving us here, guys, but it's absolutely not limited to just Finder or iTunes. In reality, you can actually limit these people from using pretty much any app you want. So there's a specific app or a specific function you don't want them to have access to, or you don't want them to use it for whatever reason, you can absolutely do that with an MDM. Right, folks, now believe it or not, that was the last topic for that specific section. It's a much shorter section than the previous one. I mean, wow. So we're going to move you guys into the third and the last main section for this video, and that is troubleshooting operating system and app security. Right, first topic up, folks, root access security concerns. So I think for you guys to know the security concerns here, or to understand the security concerns, you probably first need to know what rooting actually is. So it depends on what kind of device we're talking about here. So if it's an Apple device, iOS, it's generally referred to as jailbreaking. If you're using an Android device, it's normally just called rooting. In both cases, though, it involves you unlocking your device's hidden potential. So normally what you'll have in common is you're going to go to your dialer of your phone, you're going to type in a code. It honestly looks like you're just pressing random numbers and hashes and stars and stuff. It's a very long code. And then randomly, boom, something's going to happen. So that is normally jailbreaking or rooting. Now when that something happens, you'll notice your phone or your device, whatever device this is, will suddenly have a lot more options available than what it would normally have. If you go into the settings, for example, you'll find your settings menu is now 2 times, 3 times longer, if not even longer. You'll have access to all kinds of cool and funky tools which can be used for troubleshooting purposes, but they can also be used for other purposes, sometimes not so nice purposes. So let's start you guys off with rooting. Like I said, that's for Android. So rooting is the term we use for Android devices. Jailbreaking is what we use for iOS devices. Now, with rooting, guys, we can say the admin controls via exploits or unauthorized methods. So you're going to have to go and use some sort of unauthorized method by typing in that code I just spoke of, or you'll have to go and use some sort of exploit. Generally, a lot of companies do not like it when you go and jailbreak or root a device. It's because that device can now be used for, well, other purposes, which is not so nice. Malicious purposes in some cases. So we generally don't like devices like that. So companies can actually block a device from connecting to their network if that device is detected to be rooted or jailbroken. Believe it or not, we can detect that. Now, as for the Apple side of things, iOS side of things, guys, this gains root access for customizations and side loading. So if you want to go and do customizations in your device, things you would normally not be able to go and do, it will allow you to go and do that. If you want to go and side load an app of yours, you can do that now. Normally you won't be able to do that, but now you can. On a lot of iOS operating systems, you can't just go and willy-nilly upload whatever app you want. You've got to use their list of pre-approved apps from their silly store. Now, with Android, they're not as strict, but maybe you want to go and use your own app on your iOS operating system. Well, if you go and jailbreak it, you'll be able to do that. Now, I don't think this is something you guys are going to have to go and do for much longer, though, because all the new, latest versions of iOS, they actually come pre-unlocked. You know, I wouldn't say they're jailbroken, but they are unlocked to a certain extent in the sense of apps, and you will be able to go and choose from a much larger library of apps, not just the apps that they've pre-approved. Now, unfortunately, folks, with both rooting and jailbreaking, it does weaken your security, like massively. It leaves devices vulnerable. And it also weakens the security of your environment in general, which is why I just said earlier, companies do not allow devices to go and connect to their network if it's detected that these devices are jailbroken or rooted. Because for all they know, you're up to no good. So if a device is detected that it's been jailbroken or rooted, that device in question will be blocked from accessing the network. So if you go and root your device, maybe not even for malicious reasons, maybe just wanted to go and do something on your own device, and now you want to go to the office to go and connect to that network, guess what? It's not going to work. You're going to get blocked, guys. Now, there's obviously many risks involved here. So, just to name a couple, rooting or jailbreaking, guys, bypasses the operating system security. So, any operating system you've got installed, it normally bypasses that security. So, you're not exactly going to be safe anymore. It's very risky, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So, if it's someone like me, or if you guys know what you're doing, then you should be okay. But for the average Joe that's not tech savvy, yeah, it's very dangerous. Other risks, guys, is, and this is something I've mentioned now a couple of times, MDMs, like Microsoft Intune, they block devices that have been jailbroken or rooted. So now if you've got devices that's been jailbroken or rooted, maybe not even for malicious reasons, these folks are not going to be able to connect to your network. So they went home, they jailbroke their own device, or they rooted their own device for whatever reason they might have had. Maybe it was not malicious at all, the intent behind it. But now they don't know that they're going to be blocked. So now they come to the office of that same device and suddenly they can't connect and they don't understand why. So that's another risk or an issue that you're going to be facing, and it's a very annoying one, let me tell you that. Lastly, folks, let's mention something called developer mode. It's absolutely not something all of us will go and use. I, for one, don't exactly go and use this. Maybe it's because I'm not a developer, but it is something that one of you guys might go and use. So if you're the kind of developer that develops your own apps and all that, and you would like to go and upload it, yeah, maybe you'll benefit from this. So with developer mode, guys, we can say it is for app development only. So avoid routine use. It's not meant for other things. It's only for app development. And unfortunately, once again, an MDM can block devices in this mode, guys. Alright, I'm going to move you guys on to mobile app source security concerns. Now, what we mean by that is, where exactly are you or this user getting that app from, which is now installed on that device, or that's about to be installed on that device? So if you look at something like Apple, let's talk about trusted sources. If you look at Apple with their iOS operating system, up until now, they've pretty much been forcing people to use their store. The benefit of that is it's a lot safer, it's a lot more secure, and a lot more of these apps are, well, they're vetted. People have kind of like checked if these apps are legit or not. Downside is, well, you can't exactly go and choose any app outside of the store of this, so you're kind of locked in there, if you can put it like that. Now, if you look at Android with their Play Store, you might think it's a very safe place to go and download from the Play Store, but it's not. If you're going to go and download something very well known that everybody is using, something like WhatsApp, then you're probably going to be fine, because chances are, if there was something wrong with it, somebody would have moaned about it by now and you would have heard it somewhere on the news. Now, where you guys need to be careful though is those random weird games and apps that you've never heard of before in your life. You don't know anybody that's using that app or that game. Those are the dangerous ones. Now, you might say, hey, but I look at the reviews, I look at the rating, I look at the comments. Did you know you can go and review your own app or game? Did you know you can go and comment on your own app or game? So who's to say that all those ratings you're seeing and all those comments you're seeing are not fake? Yeah, it's a bit risky. So I would suggest, if you are going to go and download something from the Play Store, for those of you that's using Android, and a lot of you guys are, don't download anything you've never heard of before. If it's a very well-known, approved app, sure, go for it. If it's something you've never heard of before, yeah, you're taking a huge leap of faith. Now, also on this note of trusted sources, guys, that is why we normally use the phone's store. Although, yes, it is somewhat unsecure as well. If you're going to go to random websites using your phone's browser, and if you're going to go download apps like that for your phone, there's a lot higher of a chance of you getting infected and getting compromised in some sort of way. So the source of these apps is very important. Where exactly are you or these users getting the app from? I further want to add on to this. This is why companies will have a list of pre-approved apps. Somebody like me or you would have gone and basically vetted certain apps that we know is going to get the job done and that we know is safe and secure. And we will go and pre-approve these apps and these apps only. So now this way, if the user tries to go and get another app that does more or less the same thing, they're going to be blocked from using that app because we have pre-approved another app already. They can't go and choose another one, even if it is not malware. They've got to use the ones that we have approved. There's multiple reasons for this. The main one here right now is obviously security, but sometimes it's also from a licensing perspective. Maybe we pre-approved that app because we've got a license for it, or it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot more affordable, and now the apps that you want to go and use is maybe, I don't know, it's less secure, it's going to cost more, you know, that kind of stuff. Something you folks need to also be on the lookout for is app spoofing. Now, the term spoofing, in case you guys don't know, or in case you guys don't remember from this course, is to go and forge something. This could be to forge an IP address, it could be to forge a MAC address, it could be to forge a website or an email address, or in this case, forging an app. So there's apps that look like they're the real app, but they're not. Maybe, just maybe, you want to go and download the app for your respective bank from your app store. But now instead of downloading the real banking app, you're downloading another one that just looks like your banking app. That's a problem, because now you are going to try and log in with your real banking credentials and they're going to get a hold of it. So that's just an example of an app that's being spoofed. It could literally be any app, guys. Any app which is going to basically allow them to gain access to your device or gain access to sensitive information like a username and a password perhaps. These are generally the purposes of these kinds of apps. It could be anything, but from what I've seen, a spoofed app is normally an app that looks like the real app, and the intention is for them to gain access to your device for whatever reason, or they're looking for something sensitive, something of value, like a username or a password. Things we also need to be on the lookout for, guys, is enterprise apps. And then something that I did not mention earlier, which is very similar to Intune, is Apple Business Manager. Feel free to run a search for that one if you guys are not familiar with it. It's another app of sorts, it is but it's not, which allows you to manage the apps on your devices. It is more Apple than anything else though, so if you're running an Apple device, then yeah, it'll probably work. For those of you that's running Android, yeah, no, this is not the way to go. I would suggest you go and use Intune or something like that. Intune, which is a Microsoft tool, does, funny enough, work on Apple devices though. Apple's Business Manager, yeah, it's more for Apple devices. But if you go look at something like Microsoft Intune, it also works on Apple devices, as well as many other devices and platforms. So you might be better off using that one instead. At the end of the day, it is your choice which one you go and use. And then, folks, something that I think you probably do know, side loading, which is basically uploading your own app to your device, side loading weakens security. So instead of getting an app from a pre-approved list or getting it from a legitimate source, if you are going to go and upload another app that you made or somebody else made, you are effectively weakening the security of that device of yours. Who's to say that developer that you got now, they might have added a little backdoor in this app, which is now going to cause all kinds of shenanigans. So sideloading in general, guys, is just very frowned upon, and it's something we normally try and avoid in a company environment. The last thing I'm going to mention under this topic of app source, guys, is bootleg stores. Feel free to go and look up this term a little bit further if you want to, but basically it comes down to fake stores. It looks like a real store or a real website, but it's not. So it's very much the same as app spoofing, except this is pretty much more of a whole store that's being spoofed, if I can put it in simple terms. So be very careful for bootleg stores. It's an actual terminology that we use for when you find a store that looks like a real one, but it's not. Anyway, enough of that. Let's move you guys on to another topic in this section, mobile security symptoms. Before I jump in here, guys, today's hidden word or hidden phrase in this video, for those of you who want to play along, is rooting. So, if you've been watching my series, if you've been following along, you would know what this whole concept of hidden words and hidden phrases is. It's completely optional, you don't have to play it, but if you do want to play, today's hidden word is the word rooting. Let's see what you guys can come up with. Anyway, so with regards to mobile security symptoms, the signs there, guys, if there's something bad happening on your device or the user's device, let's say this device is now possibly been compromised, there's a couple of signs that you can be on the lookout for. It's not guaranteed that this device is now infected, but generally these signs are pretty definitive. So this will be things like excessive ads. So while you are using this device, you'll see ads popping up. And this is not necessarily when you're on a web browser, mind you. You could just generally be using your device. You could be going into your menus, and the next thing you know, you've got ads popping up. This happens to my kids' phones all the time, because you know how kids are. They keep going to the Play Store, and they keep downloading these free games. These free games have got a lot of ads and stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of these free random games my kids keep downloading, they've got malware in them. Now, sometimes 2 or 6 months will go by before my kids get any real malware on the device. Other times, it's not even a week after I reset that device of theirs, then they'll get malware again. And in most cases, it's probably because they went and downloaded the same freaking thing as the last time that gave them malware. It's gotten so bad, dudes, where I've seen my kids will leave their phone there on the desk. It's off. It'll just be lying there on the desk. It's not off, but the screen is off. They're not doing anything on the phone. Next thing I know, their phone screen turns on, and suddenly an ad starts displaying, or a video starts playing on their phone, which is an ad. So it's really, really bad in some cases. I've seen quite a few of those where the phone will actually even turn on while you're using it, or even while you're not using it, like in my kid's case. So even while you're not using it, it'll turn on, start displaying an ad, and it kind of sort of renders that phone useless. The only way I could get that off is to do a factory reset on that phone. Other things to be on the lookout for, guys, is fake warnings. That's not just for mobile devices, that's also for computers and stuff. When you start getting warnings, hey, you've got a virus, install this antivirus. You know, that kinds of warnings. Slow responses, so when this phone or whatever this is starts getting slow, like very slow, way more than usual, and you know for a fact you haven't done anything on this device, that could be pretty suspicious. And also just in general internet issues. So if you can see everybody else in the area has got good connection and suddenly your device doesn't have good connection, keeps cutting out, it's off, it's on, it's slow, doesn't mean there is malware, but it is a sign of malware. So you might want to investigate this further. And then folks, let's talk about suspicious apps. If you see apps on your device or that of your user's device, apps that you did not install or apps that the user does not even know about, yeah, you might want to investigate those apps. Check what permissions these apps have as well. It could be that this is spyware. So often these suspicious apps, guys, they misuse permissions or they cause high data usage. So that's one of the first things you want to go and check is this app perhaps abusing permissions, and does it perhaps in the background have a high data usage? Normally with most phones, if you go into your settings, there is a place you can go and check how much data each app is using. And if you find one of these new suspicious apps, something you don't know anything about, is using a very high amount of data, it could be that that's malware. You might want to go and check that. And then the last thing here under this particular topic, data leaks. Something we really don't want, especially if somebody's got a phone or a tablet that's got a lot of company sensitive information on it. So that's why we often force people to use encryption and all that kind of stuff. So data leak, watch out for two-factor authentication alerts or breached accounts. So when you start receiving alerts that says, hey, you've just tried to log in from here, please confirm with your PIN or blah, 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 and you know for a fact it wasn't you, yeah, that could be someone that's trying to break in. Or maybe you get an app notification that says, please acknowledge this. Maybe it's on your Authenticator app, and you don't know anything about this thing you're supposed to go and acknowledge. Watch out. Someone could be trying to reset your password. They could be trying to break in somewhere. Alright folks, and then still on this topic of mobile security symptoms, this is actually the last topic for this video, but I'm running out of room here. So I'm going to just quickly clear this page up, and then I'm going to continue with this topic, and then we'll be done with this module. So the next topic up under this umbrella of mobile security symptoms is location risks, folks. So location risks with this one, you need to remember things like removing geotags from photos to prevent misuse. A lot of people don't know this, a lot of people don't even think about this, but when you go into platforms like Instagram or Facebook and you go and tag where this photo was taken, that is actually very, very dangerous. If I am the threat actor here, I can use that information to break into your platforms. So be very careful. Don't add geotags to your photos. Don't say, hi, I took this photo at blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. It's very bad to go and do that, guys. And then the last things I'm going to mention, best practices. This is not the only best practices, but I'm going to mention 3 for you guys. The first is using strong passwords, not just on your mobile device, but pretty much everywhere. Also, I'm going to add on to that one, don't use the same password for multiple things, guys. If you go and use a password, even if it's a strong password, but you use that same password for multiple things, as soon as I crack that password, I've got access to everything of yours. So don't use the same password for more than one thing. The second thing I'm going to say on the best practices, guys, is of course use multi-factor authentication, or in this case, as they call it, two-factor authentication. It doesn't stop a threat actor from gaining access to your stuff, but it does drastically make it a lot harder for them to gain access to your stuff. It's not just going to be on a silver platter. You're going to make them work their butts off for it. And then the last one, guys, monitor your permissions. If you've got a phone or a tablet or even quite frankly on your PC, monitor what permissions your apps has. If you see an app of yours has got permissions that it doesn't need to have, go and revoke that. The last thing you want is for an app to have permissions that it doesn't need. So this kind of somewhat refers to that IT topic where we normally talk about giving least privilege. You never give someone, or in this case, something, more privilege than what they or it needs to achieve a task or a goal. So it clearly applies to apps as well, folks. Anyway, folks, I hope you've learned something from today's module. If you have, please let me know in the comment section down below what you've learned that you did not know before. Just a shout out and a thank you to all of you guys that are supporting me. So if you want to support me or my channel some sort of way, you can find that information in the video description down below. You can buy me a coffee or a milkshake. You can make a PayPal donation. Or, hey, you can even become a Patreon. If you become a Patreon, we can have your name displayed in the video. That's completely optional. So here's a list of the PayPal donors. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Here is the Patreons. So if you do become a paid Patreon, you will have the option to have your name displayed here. You just need to let me know that you want your name displayed. You get to choose what name displays. Unfortunately, the majority of Patrons normally prefer to stay anonymous, so in which case I will not display your name here. Alright folks, and then the last thing for this video, and I think everybody knows this part, the channel does have a Discord server. Link is in the video description down below. And we also have created a new Reddit, a brand spanking new Reddit on the Reddit platform. It's called CompTIA_plus. So if you've got questions related to this course or any other CompTIA course, post it there. If you want to post your exam score reports there, or just in general, if you've got questions, about the exam or the course, you're welcome to post it there as well. Alright folks, I will see you in module 21 of the CompTIA A+ course, which is the second last module. So we're almost done with the course.